decks of choice, I think the first thing that I'm noticing is we may be looking at a mirror of what we saw round one.
Which, honestly, that might be the trend here. We've seen quite a few players just from scouting out all the different choices that they've made. A lot of them landed on similar decks. We've seen the Mewtwo deck. It's very prominent. Maybe the deck lists are a little bit different. I certainly see some changes in Rahul's compared to our former player.
Sure, and I think that that's one thing that's going to be it's going to remain a constant throughout the weekend. Is we may be seeing Mewtwo and Mew be the the Pokemon of choice, the attacker of choice with perfection, but we're going to be seeing a lot of potentially different variations of this deck because you have access to every card in the standard format as long as perfection can use its ability to use the attack. It could potentially be something that you use in order to surprise your opponent. And of course, we're going to be seeing techs of choice from Mewtwo and Mew players throughout the weekend, and can't wait to see exactly how both of these players get their games going here. And we obviously know that Rahul won game one. Of course, Rahul being on Mewtwo and Mew, perfection, and Grant being on the Guzzlord deck that we've seen in round one kind of take over. And the names are a little bit swapped here. Grant Manley is, or actually, I apologize, they're not. Grant Manley is going to be the player in a red t-shirt on the...
No, you're correct, yeah.
Oh, no, okay. I was correct the first time around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the names are a little bit swapped here. And Grant Manley is going to be on the right, and Rahul Reddy is going to be on the left. So we'll get that fixed for you guys in just a second. But once again, I believe it was Rahul that won game one, even though it says that Grant Manley won game one. I guess we'll give verification on that in just a second. But because Grant's going first, I assume Grant lost game one.
Certainly assume that as well. Looks like Grant is finding a few pieces, maybe not exactly what he's looking for, though. Would love to find maybe some mysterious treasure so that he can start to get through his deck and find those mischievous.
Okay, so remember, Grant Manley is on that Guzzlord deck with that Mismagius engine, and right away we see Duststone with Mischievous already in play, finds that Mismagius, and we can see Grant really use this ability as early as this first turn if he chooses to do so, and it's kind of going to depend on his hand if he does or not. And there's another Mischievous here, and an energy attached onto this Naganadel and Guzzlord GX tag team Pokemon. And that's going to be the end of turn one for Grant.
He's slow playing this thing.
Yeah,
he has a really good hand.
You know what's interesting is we're seeing how I would assume that Danny would not have played this deck the exact same way. I would assume that Danny would probably be knocking out this Mismagius and going for a pretty big turn.
Go.
So,
reset stamp to 4. But
yeah, exactly.
He's got his own way of going about this.
And that's a play pattern that kind of gets opened up to you with a deck with so many options. Like, it's not necessarily clear cut who's going to be the making the better play there. Is it going to be the more conservative play that Grant made, or is it going to be potentially the more go play like you mentioned with Danny?
Right.
It's going to be something interesting throughout the weekend as well. But Rahul now looking through his deck with that Giant Hearth, finding himself 2 fire energies, discarding 1, I believe. And actually, it looks like a welder, a welder for. Wow. So we have 3 energy in play onto that Mewtwo and Mew tag team because of welder and double fire. Good old Giant Hearth combination. You got to love it if you're Rahul, or if you're a Rahul fan. And Rahul now finding himself, I believe, actually, I don't have a good view of him.
Yep. Oh, I mean, Rahul put himself in a pretty great spot. He's got Tag Purge locked up, so this means that Grant is going to need that Ultra Forest supporter card if he wants to start to work through the ability. If he's able to find that, then he can put himself in a better spot. This is just where it gets a little awkward because he's going to need to probably combine that with a Lieutenant Surge. He does have Ultra Forest Carton Boy in hand, but does he feel comfortable enough playing this as supporter for the turn, and that's it. And it looks like he's going to hold off. Potentially, maybe he can find that Lieutenant Surge on this draw here from the Mischievous.
So where does Ultra Forest Carton Boy really come into play in this matchup?
Well, when your opponent uses Tag Purge, you're probably like, all right, let's get through that.
And so with Tag Purge being the attack of choice, of course, it seems like that's going to be just a perfect combination of cards here for Grant. Will Grant be able to pull off this game and send into a game 3? It seems like he has the tools available to him to do so, but Rahul had a great start himself. Will Grant, well, there's an Acrobite for Grant. Looks at a Psychic Energy and maybe a Cynthia and Caitlin, I believe.
Yep. Just checking out in the discard pile if there's anything that he'd want there.
Goes with that Psychic Energy, brings it to his hand, and down goes Cynthia and Caitlin.
Order pad.
Order pad, potentially.
Big flip.
And
now he's just got to
looks
decide
like
what he
he
wants.
got it, yeah. He got that big flip here for the order pad, so that's going to be, well, any item card. And it goes into his hands. That's so powerful in this deck. Of course, B-String, you want to get as many of them as possible. And that seems to be it. So now Grant finding that B-String puts it in his hand, and we may be seeing a Mismagius at this point.
We do need to update the graphic. One price card has been taken for Rahul from the ability of the Mismagius. Grant obviously looking for the second one now so that he can get some access to that Beast Ring.
Do not believe it's in hand yet. Still finding it. Remember, Beast Ring requires your opponent to be at 3 or 4 prizes. So that's kind of why you want to knock out your own Mismagius, is you knock them out, you force your opponent to take prizes, and then you use that to your own advantage with cards as powerful as Beast Ring. Really an innovative strategy. And there's that Mismagius, and down goes Mismagius. That's another prize taken for Rahul. That's 4 prizes now left for Rahul, and that means Beast Ring is online, my friend.
Here we go. It's party time.
All right, there's that Beast Ring. And it's gonna mean 2 energies now being played onto that Guzzlord that has 120 damage on it. But do we have more options available to us? Do we have another Beast Ring, for example?
I mean, he wants to use Malolana. He wants to use Ultra Forest, but he doesn't have the surge to make this happen. So now he's in a spot where he's wondering, do I just attach these to the active and just use Ultra Forest right now? Do I just try to get some chip damage in so that potentially I can knock out this Mew on the following turn with another one? That means he's going to have access to a Beast Ring this turn because he only has 1 energy on his bench Pokemon. That will not be ready to attack on the following turn. He won't have any access to Beast Rings if his Pokemon's knocked out by Rahul, which is pretty likely.
Yeah, with 120 damage on it already, it seems like almost inevitable, really, that Guzzlord is not going to be around at the end of Rahul's turn. But it seems like we're in the same position that Danny was in Game 2.
Yeah.
Where you just don't have the tools you need to finish playing this game out, despite your opponent only having 4 prizes. These Guzzlords, despite having a lot of hit points, are still kind of vulnerable to the high damage attack from Mewtwo and Mew. There's Tag Call finding himself Mallow and Lana and Cynthia and Caitlin. So that's 2 supporters being fetched from the deck with this very powerful item card. Yep. I believe there's already been a supporter for the turn or not.
He played the Malolana and removed the damage, swapped his Pokemon, and he's just going to have to pass with this Naganadel and Guzzlord in the active spot. No attacks coming down. Rahul, very aggressive, going to go ahead and play that Welder, multiple energies onto the bench. Mewtwo.
Okay, so this has to mean really good news for Rahul, right?
This is exactly where he'd like to be. This kind of leaves Grant at a spot where he's going to need to have a really amazing reset stamp, and Rahul's going to have to not have any condition to win the game on board. But if Rahul already has Charizard in the discard pile, maybe he can set up some play.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah, he's just
Look at
done.
that speed go. It's over. That combination of cards really just put too much pressure onto Grant. And Rahul is going to take a quick 2-game series against Grant Manley, and he's going to advance the 2 games to a 2-0 record. And Grant will be falling to a 1-1 record. That's a matchup of 2 powerhouse players just playing some very fast and powerful decks, and it seems like Mewtwo has gotten the best of Guzzlord 2 rounds in a row here on stream.
Yeah, and in very different but similar ways. So it's Grant had a little different of a playstyle approach to it, and it wasn't able to work out for him just because he wasn't able to find the right cards at the right time. He was desperately looking to find the Lieutenant Surge strategy, and he wasn't able to find it, and it really limited his options. And I think we could have seen a completely different game if he was able to play